Get this 11 to 1 weekdays on the Triple M network.
Please, some fake applause. Have you got some, Richard, for Danny Boyle?
Yes.
He directed Shallow Grave and Trainspotting and 28 Days Later, and now a new film called Sunshine, which comes out in about a month's time. Welcome aboard, Danny.
Thank you very much, guys. Very nice to be here.
We are huge sound effects buffs on this show, and you made was it your first film in cinemas, Shallow Grave?
Yeah, that's right.
The most appalling sound in the history of cinema is there's a sound of someone sawing up a body in a forest.
Oh, that's right.
And I can still remember that sound effect like 10 years later.
That's right. It's weird cinema because 70% of it is sound.
Yes.
And they get no status on a film set, and everybody goes on about the cinematographer and the visual appeal of the film and everything like that. And you run most films without sound, and they're just unwatchable, you know?
Have you ever taken part in the Foley group? I got to spend a week, and it's almost the most fun I've ever had was a week in the Foley group on a movie. Explain what Foley is.
They basically do all the sound effects, like everything from footsteps to sawing up bones to kind of licking lips like that.
Just rustling of clothes.
Yes. And it's a science, really. They've got all these amazing bits of equipment that allow them to do stuff like that. It's one of the most extraordinary bits of filmmaking where suddenly everything is filled in. All the kind of holes and gaps in a film are filled in by all this bits of rustle and tissue paper, anything.
And like in people talking in the background of a restaurant and clinking plates and stuff, that's all them as well, isn't it?
And they watch the screen as they're doing it, and they're kind of like timing it to go with the screen and everything like that.
That is the most fun restaurant in the background, and that's called, I think, Loop Group, where you just get about 20 people who work at the sound studio, and you say, guys, you got to come in here and pretend to be talking in the background. And what you can do is there's a chance to put all kinds of libelous in-jokes. Have you ever done that?
In the deep, deep background.
Yeah, just like someone in a restaurant, you just slag off the producers of the film. And only people with DTS Hannibal sound will be able to detect the libel later.
Yeah.
What are we talking about? Why are we talking about sound effects? How did we get here? You're in space for your new film, Sunshine.
Where there is no sound.
No. So how do you go with, it's one of these movies where there's going to be spaceships, there's going to be certain conventions that you've seen in a lot of other films. Did you have a meeting where you went, we've got to avoid this, we've got to avoid that?
It's amazing the way the ghosts haunt you of all the people who've made space movies before. There's certain rules you have to follow, and you cannot, much as you want to, you can't depart from those rules. Otherwise, the film just collapses in front of an audience. It doesn't work.
Now, what would be some of those?
Well, a big one is star fields.
Yes.
You know, like when you see star movies, there's always a kind of sprinkly, all these stars out there twinkling away. In space, you can't see any stars. Because if you see the sun, it's like you don't see, there's no other light, there's just black space and a huge star, the sun. Okay. But if you do that, your spaceship appears to be motionless. It doesn't appear to be moving. And everybody goes, why have they stopped? What's gone wrong? Yeah. And nothing's gone wrong. It's just not, it's just, there's nothing for it to be seen again. So every movie has to have a star field because otherwise the ship doesn't look like it's moving.
Yeah, that's why we didn't get much movement in the ones that we shot on Super 8 when I was a kid with Star Trek, TIE Fighter, Star Wars.
Don't call in.
We're just dangling against blackness. It was appalling. We tried our own motion control system with the Super 8. Disaster! But and now, of course, you mentioned the sun. The sun's going out. This is how many years in the future?
Well, it's meant to be about 50 years in the future, yeah.
You're right. It's running out of puff. We've got to send a huge bomb into space, fire it into the centre of the sun to get it kick-started again. Is this based on real science or something you've cooked up?
There is a plausible explanation, which is to do with something called cue balls, which I can't really explain, to be honest.
Richard
it's so complicated.
Richard, how does that work again?
I think it's in the third act of Short Bus, isn't it?
Hang on, we're not talking about Short Bus.
Okay.
Hope you haven't seen
that's not that type of program, Danny.
No starfields in Short Bus, but certainly conventions to be observed. So this is possible? The sun might go out? We're going to have to send a bomb up there?
It is, actually. It is. It's very unlikely because it has got, hopefully, 5 billion years still to burn. It's about halfway through its life cycle. But it could happen. And anyways, so they send up this huge nuclear bomb. And the bomb's the size of Manhattan Island. It is massive. Originally, it was the size of Kansas. That was how we sold the film when we pitched it.
Oh,
We said the bomb's the size of Kansas, but we couldn't afford that. So we had to settle for Manhattan Island as a bomb size.
And you've got a fantastic international cast in there, including a New Zealander, I think you've got in your cast.
We've got Cliff Curtis.
Yeah, he's good value.
Fantastic. Who I'd seen in Once Were Warriors.
And Whale Rider. I think everyone in New Zealand was in Once Were Warriors. It's pretty much take a number, do your scene. Punch someone in the
I don't
Next,
want
please.
Gotta go and be in this film.
And you've got our own Rose Byrne, of course, in
And
there.
the beautiful, wonderful Rose Byrne, who I've just been with actually doing an interview. And
Have
she's
you?
gone off to rehearsing. She's rehearsing a film with Hugo Weaving at the moment.
Right.
And she's fantastic in the film. She's the one who, it's all about what psychologically happens to them as they approach the source of all life in the universe. And she's the one who hangs on to her morality longer than anybody.
Yeah, that's the Australian character. For you. And of course, going mad in space on any long flight, someone's going to go mad.
Yeah.
You've got to deal with
yeah.
madness.
You've got to deal with insanity. Yeah, they all get a moment of crisis, and they all die wonderful deaths. That's the thing.
Don't give it
That's
away,
good
Daddy.
stuff.
The really good thing is that when you get an ensemble cast like this, you can kill them in any order that you want. You know? And they do all die, but it is a happy ending despite that. So.
I've got a quote, and it's always dangerous reading people quotes of themselves from the internet. I remember you came out here for the film A Life Less Ordinary, and Trainspotting had just come out, and you were probably the hottest film director in the world. And this quote here from you, once you've had anything like a hit in the movie business, it's easy to get lost. All these people scuttling around trying to get you to make things, suggesting things, offering deals. The pressure of what to do next is horrible. Did you get offered some dodgy ideas in the wake of Trainspotting?
Sequel to Hudson Hawk.
You do get made a lot of offers, and you get offered a lot of actors. You know, a lot of actors suddenly want to know you, want to climb into the bed with you, or not literally.
I remember that when you came out here, the word was there were 2 local actresses who were having a competition to see who could actually sleep with you. I don't know whether you would have ever have heard that
I
story.
couldn't possibly comment on that.
I notice you've got an Australian actress in your new film, but I'm sure that's a coincidence.
I'm sure it is, yeah. No, the thing I remember about coming out here is I flew out and I flew direct here. And I was like really weary with the jet lag and everything. And we did this Q&A, and it was in Melbourne. I can't remember which cinema it was at. And they said, the Q&A guy said, the film hasn't really worked, has it, in the UK? Like, it was quite blunt.
Welcome aboard.
And I started my answer, and I said, well, I think the reason that the film hasn't worked is, and I paused there foolishly at that moment, because I was feeling a bit bleary, and a voice shouted out from the back of the auditorium, because it's not very good, mate, is it?
There's people who go along with lines like that on a card, just waiting for an opportunity to get them in. But Trainspotting, I mean, would it be the British film of the 90s? Would people look at it that way? Is it hard to live under the sort of icon of something like that?
People say that, and it's really lovely the way people come up to you still and talk about it and stuff. And you meet all these really young people who've seen it, and you think they've sort of caught up with it in a video store or somewhere like that. And you have to be gracious about it, really, because it is really nice to be popular, as we all know.
Yes.
For whatever the reason, and however old the film is, it's still nice to be popular.
Well, there is a sequel in book form. Isn't Porno, the book, a sequel to Trainspotting?
Irving Welsh, who wrote it, he's written this sequel, and he's given us the rights to make it sort of in perpetuity rather than flog it off. He could have flogged it off for millions to people, but he's given us the rights to do it. But it's based on the premise that the guys who kind of spent their, the total hedonists who felt invincible in their 20s, they're now in their 40s and their hair's falling out and they're getting fat.
Great.
They can't get it up anymore, and and it's what happens to them. And those actors, unfortunately, they all still look about the same age. Because as we know, actors, even though they tell you that they're hard-drinking, hard-loving people, they're actually in a spa at the weekend, covered in moisturiser. And they're early in bed, and so they just look the same.
Well, it would be great to get that cast back there. You have to wait, another 10, 15 years before
I think
they
so. It
they
might be
look
that
right?
long, yeah.
How about a bit of aging makeup? That always goes down a treat.
What about some dodgy digital aging makeup? Like, what are they doing now? No, I had to ask about this. Is this going on? There's a film called Blood Diamond out at the moment.
Yeah.
Apparently, I haven't seen it, but towards the end, Jennifer Connelly is crying. Digital tears. Does that go on, Danny?
Oh,
Really?
yeah, you can add those, yeah. I think Brad's got digital eye kind of bags under his eyes in Babel. That's what it looks like to me, anyway.
Actors can't even be bothered growing their own eye bags now. Pathetic. Hey, you mentioned now Trainspotting. Do you do stage versions of your own films?
No, there was a stage version of it, which was actually done before the film, and we went to see it.
Right.
And the guy who plays Spud in the film, fantastic actor, Ewan Bremner.
He
played Renton in the stage version, and that was the only tricky thing about casting. Because
Right.
I had to tell him,
okay.
you're not going to play Renton. We want you to play Spud instead.
He
And
was in
great.
Pearl Harbor in the end, wasn't he? He popped up in
They
Pearl
all
Harbor.
popped up in all these big movies, like they're all in Black Hawk Down as well. Because it had such an impact. They thought, we'll have a bit of that. We'll have a bit of realism in our film, and they pluck them and
Can't
tuck
have
them in
too
them.
much kind of actual junkie work in our American films. What else could they do?
But was there also a stage play of 28 Days Later? Is that true?
I don't think so.
I'm
not
sure
that
I read that
Not
somewhere.
that I know about, but if you know anything about it, let us know, because there'll be royalties involved.
Because that sounds like a great idea. Was that the first movie to speed up zombies? They've been pretty much lumbering for 60 years.
No, supposedly there is a film. There is one. I think The Crazies. I think The
The
Crazies.
Crazies, which isn't that a George Romero film as well?
I think
possibly?
Romero's connected to it. I think they sped him up a bit in that, yeah.
Right.
But it was unusual to do it. I just thought you can't do a modern zombie movie and they still lumber around.
No. And the thing is, it kind of, when George Romero went back to the game himself, it was just, come on, get a move on! Too much lumbering! More swooping in from right of frame when you're looking left. That's what we want from a zombie film now. Yes, Danny Boyle, our guest today on Get This, The Last Samurai with Tom Cruise was shot in New Zealand.
You're kidding?
You were thinking Japan, weren't you?
That's no way. There's a guy in it who's in Sunshine. I found a connection. Who's in Last Samurai. The guy who plays the guy who speaks Japanese, he doesn't speak English. Is called Hiroyuki Sanada. The guy, the really violent guy.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he's our captain in Sunshine. He plays the captain of the ship.
Meets quite a...
Amazing death he has.
Yeah.
You're giving away all the deaths.
No, you got. Well, I always go to movies to see death. So, and now he supposedly is a massive star. He's like Tom Cruise in Japan. And I'm going there tomorrow to Japan to launch the film there. So
Oh, we'll drop that name. That'll go down.
So I know I'll be in a decent hotel as well.
Most films are shot in New Zealand now. I don't know if you're aware of that, Danny. Pretty much anything.
Is that right?
Name a film, Ed. Citizen Kane, one of ours.
Really? After 6?
Half of 6. They're not up to 6, are they?
No Retreat, No Surrender 2?
Leonard Part 6, I
We're
think was.
talking to a fine film director. You know him from Trainspotting and 28 Days Later. Sunshine is coming out. Millions is a film that Richard Marsland has just mentioned. Never seen it, yet to ever find a person with a bad word to say about it, though.
I know it's got, the Rotten Tomatoes, the
Yes.
kind of with the reviews. It's got the highest mark ever on Rotten Tomatoes.
I'm not surprised.
But
But you can't find a bad review of it.
But you can't find anybody who's seen it either. Nobody wants to see it.
Is it because when you see it at the video shop, it looks like it might be only for children, but it isn't? Is it that kind of thing?
I think it's getting your head around the fact that I did a kids movie review or a warm-hearted family movie. I think people just instantly reject that. It's
There'll
like
be
the gag reflex.
There'll be children shooting up and climbing out of a toilet. We can't have that. Movie questions. Now, look, here is an email we've received from a man called William Korf, and he sent us the DVD cover for a new film by Terry Gilliam called Tideland. And he says, you've got to check out the censorship rating. I've never seen one that says this before, and here's what it says. Contains bizarre and disturbing content, including drug use, sexuality, and gruesome situations, all involving a child and some language. That's a long one.
That sounds great.
I was fine till the language bit. That's where I draw the line. The other stuff I'm cool with.
Have you had much of that? Have you had any bizarre censorship of any of your films?
It's weird the way it's changed, because when we did Trainspotting, you could not show in the cinema a needle going into skin.
Oh,
Absolutely.
Is that because people like me that get squirmy when it comes on? Or is it...
In theory, it was because it was showing people how to do it.
Ah.
But actually now, if you go to the movies, it's in every movie.
Oh, it's mandatory.
Puncturing skin is absolutely mandatory, yeah.
Helen Mirren all the way through The Queen, going the horse.
Yeah.
It's compulsory. There is a sequel to 28 Days Later, your zombie film, called 28 Weeks Later, but you haven't made it, and you said you'd seen it and were quite shocked.
I was quite shocked how violent it was, yeah. I mean, I like violence generally, sadly. But this really shocked me. I was like, you can't possibly show that.
And as the producer, will you be having a word to them and saying maybe tone it down, guys?
I said that and they just looked at me blankly, like I didn't realise how things had moved on.
Let's get some questions from our listeners.
Hello, Craig. How are you?
I've just seen that they're releasing 28 Days Later, the director's cut on DVD next month. Very happy for it is to the theatrical release.
So he wants to know if the director's cut of 28 Days Later will come out in cinemas.
There's so many cuts of it, Craig. I don't know what quite's happening. We did all these different endings, and they're kind of... Fox are so kind of brilliant marketing that they put out these different versions of it.
Oh, like the movie of Cluedo years ago. Different cinema, different ending.
No, what is coming out is there's a sequel to it coming out called 28 Weeks Later. That will be out in May, I believe, everywhere in the world in May.
Now, I accidentally hung up on somebody who had a question of what I do with it. Yeah, I probably shouldn't touch the screens, but what that's about.
Well, it's sort of like, it's set 6 months, obviously 28 weeks after the original film and the original infection, and the whole of the British Isles has been wiped out, and there'll be whoops of joy in Australia, I know, at that news. Anyway, 6 months later, the Americans arrive, as they always do, to reboot the country.
On a surge, one of their surges.
It's to get all the franchises up and working again, because...
Get all the vampires and zombies working together. A new zombie government.
And they set up this green zone, or the Garden of Eden, they kind of call it, to repopulate the country with expats who have been brought over from, who were outside the country during the original infection. And they start again. And, of course, everything goes wrong very, very quickly.
I see. And I'm predicting 28 months later at some point.
There is a bit at the end of it where there's clearly another sequel planned.
Hey, coming on board.
Who's got another question for Danny yet?
Hi, Matthew. How are you?
How did you get the streets deserted in London for 28 days later?
Very good question, Matthew. Actually, what we did is we used a lot of cameras, so we only shot them for a few moments at a time. And in London, you're not allowed to actually stop the traffic. The police won't stop the traffic because of these old ancient bylaws or whatever. But what we did is we got a lot of very beautiful young girls to stand at the street corners and to just lean into the cars and say to the drivers, "Excuse me, would you mind stopping? We're just making a film here for a few moments."
Wow.
And of course, at that time of the morning, it was like 4:30 in the morning in the summer. They're not wearing very much. And the drivers are all male, and they're delighted to stop. Yeah. And it worked out brilliantly. And I promise you, that is the absolute truth. That's why it was so successable. It was sex. All came down to sex.
Maybe this is what the Americans have got to do in Baghdad. More women in bikinis on street corners. Would you mind could you not set that off?
All right.
Could you not set that off in a crowd, please? Check these out. That's funny because I'm from New Zealand, and years ago there was a film called The Quiet Earth, with Bruno Lawrence playing the last man on Earth. And they got a similar, but on a much smaller scale, low budget, no one in the main street of Auckland shot. And I remember somebody saying to Jeff Murphy, the director, "How did you get that shot with no one in the streets of Auckland?" And he's going, "Oh, we just filmed it on a Sunday." It's as simple as that.
Hi, Bill. How are you?
I was just curious as to, Danny, whether you could mention who may have been one of your more temperamental actors or actresses.
Yeah, come on, tip a bucket.
How indiscreet should I be?
You're miles away down here. No one would ever hear about it.
Have you been on a plane with Ralph Fiennes?
Yeah, no, listen, I've heard these incredible rumours about Ralph Fiennes, none of which have made their way to Britain. I was completely unaware of.
Ah, really?
So this is right, there's a Qantas flight and a Qantas air stewardess.
And she lost her job, and it was a story on 60 Minutes. The story on 60 Minutes was, people have sex in airplane toilet.
Oh, my God. Well, Ralph Fiennes' PR people are clearly doing a good job for him back home because there's been no word of it at all.
Is that right? Wow. Hush that up. But I notice you've got away from
answering the question.
Sorry, Will had. Come on.
Ducking and weaving.
The most difficult person I've worked with, to be absolutely honest, was Holly Hunter.
Are you serious?
Yeah. That was tough.
On Life Less Ordinary?
On Life Less Ordinary, yeah.
Right.
Because that's a great action sequence with her in the truck.
Yes,
when she's chasing them down. I've never seen her as an action star before.
Yeah. But the rest of the people I've worked with, I've been very, very lucky, actually. They've been really great.
Right. Holly Hunter. Who would have thought? Was her part of the film completed in claymation? I seem to remember. Didn't that film end in claymation? It did, didn't it? I'm not dreaming that.
It did. That wasn't the reason, but yeah,
everyone's too temperamental. Get the plasticene in here. Who's going next?
Hi, Will. How are you?
Good, thanks. I was just wondering if 28 Days Later was meant to parallel Day of the Triffids by John Wyndham.
Parallel's a good word. We did steal quite large chunks of it from a number of different films, and that was one of the films that we borrowed from.
It seems similar.
They're all dead, though, so they couldn't sue us. You have to check that before you take it all.
Hello, Guy. How are you?
I'm very well, Ed. How about yourself?
Oh, well, hanging up on people by accident. So thanks. Your question for Danny?
First of all, I want to give Danny props for the beach, which I think is kind of all over the place, but compulsively watchable nonetheless.
There you go.
Thanks, Guy.
It did open all over the place. You're quite right there.
Yes, indeed. Well said, Tony. But I really want to ask why Danny didn't direct Alien 4 or Alien Resurrection, which probably would have been better than the pants job that the guy who directed Emily ended up making.
Ooh, right. No, I was involved with it for a while, actually. It was an amazing script written by Josh Whedon, the guy who did Buffy, the guy who invented Buffy and then reinvented it for television. And it was much more like the first film. It was very psychological. It was about cloning. Right. And it was about Ripley not being the original Ripley and thinking what it is to. It was like inside a clone, what it is to be a clone. And of course, the studio wanted it to be like Aliens. The second movie, like more an action movie.
Yes.
But and I just backed out because I couldn't handle all the special effects. I just thought I'll just get crushed in this, so I backed out of it.
Lindsay Lohan as Ripley. I just wasn't seeing that. A film that I've read various things about.
Nice guy.
Alien Love Triangle. What was that? A film where there was meant to be 3 shorts making a film? And
Yeah, it was like what they call a portmanteau film.
Yes.
And the other guys who made their ones, one was Guillermo del Toro. He made a Mimic, and then he elongated it into a full-length film, which was released as Mimic. But we left ours as 25 minutes long because we're stubborn and difficult, and of course it's never been released. But it has got an amazing cast. It's got Ken Branagh in it, and it's got Heather Graham, who's Roller Girl from Boogie Nights, and it's got Courtney Cox, and Courtney Cox plays a male alien in it. Who is married to Heather?
Alien.
Yeah, and she's married to Heather Graham.
There's got to be some makeup work going on there. Come on, some Transamerica style makeup work in that one.
There is in Heather Graham's case, yes.
Right.
So all the film is lacking is another 50 minutes, is what you're saying.
If you can think of another 50 minutes to go with it, you'll get a lot of funding,
Vacuuming Completely Nude in Paradise. What the hell is that? Why have I never heard of that film?
It's we made a couple of little films for television. We made 2 for the price of 1, you know, like you get in the supermarket.
Yeah, well done.
And they were very small and very, very funny. Tim Spall's in it, and he's hilarious in it, playing this vacuum cleaner salesman who tours Northern England trying to flog vacuums to people.
I'm sure that one will be Vacuuming Completely Nude in Paradise again.
Vacuuming completely in the nude down under. We get a bit of that on the buses style. The special effects, when I went and saw Sunshine, the screening I saw, I was the only one there. Which was great because it was like my own.
I should point out that wasn't because it was open to the public.
No. It was like something that you two were meant to come to, and you decided to go with the most recent one. So it was just me just hanging out, you know, chatting to myself and inserting some dialogue where I saw fit. But the special effects are amazing. And then I went on and had a read of the blog. I was like, wow, how do they do the sunshine? It's going to be like the most incredible bit of technology in the world. And it says here it's a bit of reflective metal, a fan, and a light.
Is that what it says?
Yeah.
Oh,
On your own blog.
It was a bit more complicated than that.
That's
I'm
what
afraid.
I thought.
See, that's just trying to pose as down-to-earth filmmakers, you know.
Oh, yeah.
It actually took a year to create those special effects.
Really?
It takes a year. You have to wait for the special effects to arrive. It is absolutely incredible. Just kind of trying not to damage the film by just waiting for this CG to arrive.
Yes.
What do you mean to arrive?
Well, it's like, I always say it's like a snail setting off from Perth, and you have to wait in Melbourne for it to arrive. I mean, it's literally, you cannot rush it. You'll just damage it if you try and speed it up. Wow. And it just build these ones and zeros into these amazing images. It's extraordinary what they can do now.
This show is like a snail travelling from Perth most days. And we do like to tell people, don't worry, it's building to something.
Oh, yeah. Something big.
Danny Boyle, thank you for sitting in for the whole hour.
Oh, no, it's been great. Thanks, guys.
And Sunshine, the best film you will ever see about someone trying to fire a bomb into the sun, opens on April the 12th all across Australia. And it seems that there's, well, more information about your film than you're even aware of on the internet. What have you found out?
Danny, they're selling the costumes and the props and the sets.
What?
Yeah, there's an eBay.
There's only like 8 characters in the film. How many costumes can there be?
Well, lots, because the golden spacesuits,
Yeah.
they're up for sale in about a month's time on eBay. Some of the spaceship, your chair, your fee as direct, and the credits.
They've added the phrase Stella McCartney to all the spacesuits. They're going for a lot more now.
Get this, it's blown out to 2 hours, 11 to 1 weekdays on the Triple M network.